Iran. Some more of the story from a Marine's perspective. So back in the 70s, late 70s, I was at that time a sergeant in the Marine Corps, and the Iran noise began surfacing in the media. We began learning and hearing about it. At that same time, the noise was on base, because guess what the military prepares for and plans for and makes games over that might become real. So one day we go on base to go to work, and they close the gates behind us. We mount out all our equipment and go sit in the field on the other side of the river waiting for some aircraft to come pick us up, fly us to Iran, combat ready. So this was some time before the actual seizure of or the attempts to save the hostages. It's hard to find in the papers anywhere. You might get the Jacksonville press release about the base being shut down. So basically, we sat and we waited. If we were needed, we would have been in Iran in hours. And that was the intent. So we camped out in the field waiting for those planes to come. And finally it was called off, and we all went back about our business. And within days after that, I was ready to get out of the Marine Corps, go to school. But I was in combat support roles, combat electronics support. So if you know the Marines, you're pretty close to where the war is going to be, no matter which end of the buttons you're pushing, the triggers you're pulling. So that was an interesting time. That was the only time during my time in the Marine Corps that we came close to going anywhere. And we were ready as you can be. Our training was for jungle combat and warfare, so the deserts would have been very interesting. One of the aspects of that is I was aware of something called troop readiness numbers, because that's what we dealt with. That's a part of what we dealt, making sure all the equipment for the forces were ready to go to combat, go to war. If the equipment went, I would have gone with it. So that's close combat technical support. Now, only 1 in 7 people is a combat veteran, typically. Those ratios might have changed, but it takes 6 or 7 people to support 1 combat soldier. Those were the ratios of war from back in a day. That's changed. It's been privatized for profit, and you know that part of the story. But watching these antics, this was Republican Ronald Reagan spawned politics to help finish off the Carter presidency and create more animus in war. We messed in South America so much, the CIA did. We don't know how much they did in Asia. We have ideas, though. So that whole Vietnam thing, the whole Iran thing. So years after that, still very aware of the Middle East. I've met many people in college. I met people from the Middle East that were here on educational visas, and we'd sit and have real conversations about what life was like in Lebanon or Israel, or there weren't many other students from other areas. It was mostly that small compact area. The Saudis wouldn't have messed. Saudis, that level of people would have been going to higher universities and not community colleges, so didn't run into any of that side of the wars ongoing over oil. But anyway, so we were already, we were ready to go not out and kill people. Well, some decades later, no, about 10 years later, I'm out in the civilian workforce, and one of our lab instruments gets blown up by the Israelis. The instrument is in Iraq. It's inside a nuclear plant, commercial nuclear plant that the Iranians blew up. And because I was a junior engineer, the joke was I'm going to have to go to Iraq and repair that analyzer after it's been hit by a missile. But we knew the job, and if someone paid, somebody would have gone to do that. We had these instruments in Russia. There's stories about that. So there's a touch on more Middle East follies, right? Just a little bit of information and news back then that the Israelis used to blow up anybody that tried to make commercial nuclear plants. Used to. I don't know what their opinion is anymore, letting nuclear loose on the world. So in this, Iran has started trying to enrich uranium for nuclear commercial fuel plants. If you go find the press releases for who that fuel is for, it was commercial reactor fuel for electricity. And then there was some more noise about making commercial nuclear reactor fuel for ships, which is different. The cladding, the build of the fuel rod is different. The materials are different and different rules. So that would have changed, but that doesn't. The nuclear materials for it are still the same. So Iran is sitting here in a trillion-dollar industry trying to get a toe in the door, making nuclear fuel, which most of the world wants nothing to do with, but this is a big game. This is huge money. If you get into a nuclear fuel recycling contract, you've got a 40-year, multi-billion-dollar contract to supply fuel to one commercial reactor. Just one. You get a fleet of those reactors, and you're in like Flint. You're another billionaire. You're a rich Russian oligarch. You're a Koch Industries of the Middle East. You're somebody. You're a player. You can start building hotels and washing your money through other routes because our tax laws suck. So there's the politics of today. This is very large corporate interests fighting over profits and who gets to have them. So uranium mining is where we're going. I'm going to start to focus more on uranium mining for those that give a care. If you listen this far, like it for me, please. Moral support here. Vroom, vroom. It's time to move.